first of all, thank you very much, Katalin and Pavel. Katalin giving us a look at a strategic level look at standards and open banking, and a good example, I think, from India. And then Pavel illustrating to us some of the complexity that's involved in decision making from the SME perspective. So I think a nice setting of the scene there for us to address some questions around interoperability and open banking. And I'm delighted to be joined on the stage, actually, as well as Katalin and Pavel, with Anna Kowalik, who is Open Banking Analyst for CRIF in Poland. So welcome, all of you. Anna, we heard from Katalin and Pavel already. I think if I can come to you first, if I may. Sure. Banks are on a journey. Quite a long one by the look of it, I think, really, to interoperability. And if anybody can find an easier to say word than interoperability for us all to use, I'll be very grateful, actually. Where do you think banks are on that journey? Are they still at the beginning, or are they nearing the end?
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Very, very nice to be here, my first time. And I'm very happy, to be honest, that finally we have women participating more actively in those debates. For me, it's very important, especially because I'm, like, how to say it, a promoter of sustainability. So we have a very nice balance, 50-50. So thank you for inviting me. Okay, so talking about the interoperability and this journey of the banks, when we were, I think that we all know here, most of you know, and also when we were listening to the Katalin's presentations, we are talking about standards that help to go this road to be open banking, open finance. But let's start with the example of the PSD2. That's something that is, from our garden. Today, how many standards we have of the PSD2? Berlin Group, Polish standard, etc. So you can see here that starting from this point, we're talking about open banking and easily connecting to different banks. We have boundaries. Because let me give you an example of our company, because we're offering the access to account, so we're integrating the APIs of banks. We needed to integrate almost 2,000 banks in 14 countries in Europe to offer one single API so that a user from different countries could access his or her account having in different country and a different bank. And moreover, it was the more difficult thing was that sometimes you have different API in one bank when you talk about the retail client or the retail banking or the business banking. So you have it's a twice work you need to do. So basically, if we are talking about this open API interoperability, there should be one standard. Like I, as a third-party provider, I, as a startup, they want to provide some service. I am integrating easily to this, like a marketplace, and I can offer my service to all the customers, to SMEs in different countries with different banks. Not like us looking for some third-party company to integrate all the banks or do other work in order that I can offer this nice, smooth, frictionless experience. So I think that this is the reality for today. And I think that also explains where are we now? Where are the banks with all this open banking? Of course, we can also see that, banks never were maybe the first ones to innovate, to offer maybe the services very innovative. We have those startups that also are showing us the path of new way of offering the services or offering new products. But we see that the banks are also, I would say they're on this journey, but I would say it's more in the beginning. And especially if we are talking about the SMEs and the business customers, because with retail it's always easier, it's always done faster than with the companies. When I'm looking also at Polish market, because this is where operate and have more experience. I also see that even with the service of the access to account, many banks are there like still starting to investigate what can be do, what could be the value for them, apart maybe the most common usage of in the process of lending, like mitigating the risk.
Excellent. So, and the very important point that you make there, actually, Anna, which is that this is about SMEs and where banks are on the journey. Actually, banks are much further down that journey from a retail perspective, and probably actually with larger corporates, because they have much closer relationships with larger corporates. So SMEs are getting a bit left out in the middle. Catalin, is that what you're seeing as well?
Yeah, but before that, can I have a little bit of clarification? So PSD2 was supported by implementation guidelines, and the standardization work was not properly done in the European, region. It was done in the UK, but it wasn't done, and that was caused all the confusion and several implementations. So I think what is important is to learn from the past and do it differently in the future. Yeah.
Excellent. And actually, it's worth pointing out on that point that there is no global open banking standard. Open banking tends to be done either at the national level or attempted, I guess, in terms of standards at the European level.
Yeah, I think it's like really the ISO 20022 is doing a lot of the standardization work, and that should aim towards the global open banking standards as well.
Absolutely.
And
yeah.
if I can say, it is also very important to have this global standard, because now if we are talking about with our clients, for instance, they say, "Oh, I have this client who is applying for the loan, but he or she has an account in different country. So I want for this company, for this person to do it using their bank in Germany, maybe in the US, or etc. So it also should be very easy and frictionless for this.
It should be, and we'll keep everything crossed for one day when it is. Pavel, if I can come to you, and I'd like to say, actually, I'm pleased to see that the diversity on the stage includes men with no hair. I think we can have that as well. We should have all sorts of diversity. Pavel, it is sometimes we're often told to focus on the barriers to progress. Because removing barriers to progress people seem to assume that will make things happen automatically. If we think instead about facilitators to progress, is there one thing that could make interoperability or open banking actually happen?
Perhaps yes. Yeah. And from my perspective, it's like the motivation for the banks. If you have the motivation, then it facilitates, and each barrier is smaller, simple. Yeah. But at the moment, nowadays, the banks typically have they have all cards in hands, more or less, the data, the knowledge of the customer, and also the financial power to simply develop the solution by their own. And if they process internally in the way of appification, as we spoke about it in the past, then they have the open door to simply open those APIs, or maybe will have the open doors to simply share those APIs with the other companies very easily. But there should be an interest. And if I was a bank, the only interest which drives me to overcome this barrier is a profit. So if I see any real business case which brings me, as let's say the owner of the data nowadays, the chance to simply leverage on the interoperability about the stuff which I cannot pronounce. Simply, if it helps me to make more money than in my current processes, then I will overcome it, I think, quite easily. Yeah. So this is the point from my perspective.
Very interesting, because we should never forget that banks are in business. And we can talk about all the technicalities of open banking and interoperability and everything else. Actually, it needs to be profitable. You're absolutely right. Yeah. How do we illustrate and display that potential for profitability? We heard earlier on in some of the presentations, actually, some of the surprising low cost and high return associated with some open banking solutions. Is that the sort of thing that will be sufficient, do you think?
I do think so, but again, I think we need, if it should be profitable, we should see some revenues and lower the costs. I think that the previous panel was about lowering the cost. If I manage successfully to epify, to simply develop my systems in the way that they can be interoperable between each other in the bank, then I can really open them, and this lowers the cost. As soon as I can leverage on using them for the embedded banking, then of course I will be more happy to play the peer role in this ecosystem rather than the owner of the ecosystem. If I really see the case, and it is happening now, I think, in the retail business, when the financing services, the consumer loan is part of the payment gateways. As the banks will be easily able to do the same for the merchants and to provide those services even to the SMEs, not only in the business, but even in the production, in the hospitality and the other services. Then the door is open, and simply the barrier doesn't need to be overcome because there will be no barrier at all.
Right, very interesting, because the point you make there about the internal requirement for interoperability, not just the requirement for interoperability in the external context, I guess, really. Katalin, can I come to you again, if I may? That we talked a little bit about motivating banks there. It's sometimes said that people will only change their behavior in the face of a crisis. And banks, I guess, are made of people, the same as everything else. How do we encourage banks to increase the pace, or how do we encourage anybody to increase the pace of this change that we want to see towards open banking?
I think there are multiple aspects to this question. First, I think people not only react on the basis of crisis, but only about motivation or convincing or having the DNA as the change of the organization. And it can be different perspectives, because from a technical service provider perspective, just like us, the banks are very slow. But if we take two steps behind, then the change, what is happening or what has been happening, is just massive. So banks are changing their whole technology stacks, banks are introducing new services. So it's like, I think if we are optimistic, then the banks already have this DNA inside the organization for change. And it's important for them to have this DNA in each of their employees. So it's like not one person, not two people, but throughout the organization. On the pessimistic side, what is the crisis? So I'm not sure what is the crisis that someone will wake up and say, okay, we need to do open banking tomorrow or today, because it's already too late. So I'm not sure about that part, because if you wake up and your customers are gone, it's already too late. So I wouldn't rely on the crisis scenario. I would rather rely on the DNA scenario.
Very interesting, yeah, because I guess that if the crisis arises as a result of disruption, classic disruption, as you rightly say, it's too late to do anything about it when you wake up. There is is it economists who say there are only two things that motivate people, fear and greed? And maybe in this case we need to turn banks' attitudes away from fear and more towards greed to get them motivated and things. And I don't say that in a joking manner, because of course greed is, as Gordon Gekko once said, I think in the Wall Street film, greed is good. Maybe it's not so much nowadays. Anna, can I actually come to you on that, please, if I can? Just to pick up on this motivation idea again, if I can. Are you seeing, when you talk to clients, are you seeing a sort of motivation and a keenness to actually want to change, to try and do things differently? Are you seeing that in your conversations?
Yes, of course. Maybe just to say something more to the motivation, or to why the banks will be implementing those changes, we must not forget that in the end of the day we have this company, this client, yes? And what was already said today in many presentation debates, we are talking about the digitalization, frictionless access to services, products. And for instance, today statistics say that in Europe, over 70% of SMEs would change their financial provider if they could offer them digital onboarding or digital lending. So you can see that still the client is in the center, is the most important. So the banks, they need to listen to their clients. And you know, I've been working in the banking area for, I don't know, maybe 15 years now. And since I don't know when, I remember about the customer centricity, building CRM system to understand the clients. And today we have more and more data. You can, bank always is, I mean, there is no other company in other sector that have so many data as banks. So they have a lot of data they can leverage. Now, if you add to this open banking, in the future open finance, there will be a lot of data that can be analyzed very well and allow to leverage, you know, all this knowledge in order to offer better services, to get the better profit for the bank, and so on, or mitigate the risk. This is actually what from my experience, I can see, at least in Poland, that banks are utilizing the access to account basically just to mitigate the risk when in the lending. But you know, there's a lot that can be done in order to leverage all those possibilities that we have at least now. And if you imagine if we go to more open banking, to more economy, then all of us can leverage a lot.
Excellent, thank you very much indeed. And one of the ways, I guess, actually to help people become motivated is to pick up, I think it was one of the Comarch gentlemen that mentioned the word clarity earlier on. And actually, I guess we need to be clear about what we're trying to achieve with interoperability and open banking. And Pavel, if I can I ask you this question? Maybe right. Catalin, actually. Sorry, can I go to Catalin first? Because I think it'd be quite interesting. What's the problem that open banking is meant to solve?
Yeah, and interoperability is like the easiest example that a lot of people are in this room from, I don't know, 19 countries. How many countries? A lot of countries, yeah. We don't speak, we have different native languages, but we all speak English, so this is the standard way of communication between us. So that is what interoperability is trying to solve, so that we can talk to each other, we can exchange information without barriers and without additional effort. So we don't have to hire a translator, we don't have to wait for the translation, just talk straight to each other.
So actually, I hate to say this as a native speaker of English, because it makes life very easy for me, that actually English is a form of interoperability. Interesting, very interesting. And a great compliment to everybody who doesn't have English as a first language, actually, that it is interoperability. Pavel, do you think that example is it's obviously a very good example. Do you think there's anything as universal as that which could be applied in banking? Is it technology, for example?
As you were originally trying to ask me what are the problems of the interoperability or the general problem which can be solved, I was thinking the other way around. What is the problem of the interoperability? I am not. First problem is to say. Second problem is what it really, if they are only the problems which are solved, or also the problems which are taken to the banks, for example. If I was a branch officer responsible for the relationship management of the SMEs, and the banks starts to talk about the stuff. Is it a problem for me? Is there any problem it solves to me? Or is it generating me a problem that I will lose my chair?
Right.
So from that perspective, I think we need, we are back to the motivation. We speak about the banks and that the banks are rigid. First of all, we should understand that they are also stable.
Yes.
And they have more than the technical role in the financing. I think they have also, maybe I will say, even the political role.
Yep.
Yeah, that they simply played a significant role in the stability of the economy. So that's why they cannot jump immediately in any particular technical invention we here find out.
Excellent.
So they should really follow, but still they should keep in the mind all the roles the bank have in the ecosystem.
Thank you very much, Katalin.
Yeah.
Just a reaction to what you said is that, the branch managers should not care about interoperability at all. They don't have to know about it. It's enough if if the technical people know it and use it. On the business level, you must not know about it. You just use it.
Absolutely, thank you. Anna, we are almost out of time, just a minute or so to go. Can I ask you for a last comment? What would be a tip or a piece of advice that you would give either to a bank or to perhaps to a group of SMEs about open banking? We didn't rehearse this earlier on, by the way.
Well, it's a very good question. Maybe I would say something like this. When we are talking with our clients regarding the usage of the open banking, especially the access to the information to account, many often we hear that people don't want to connect their bank accounts. And they ask us how we do it, how to motivate them. And I was thinking how to answer this question, but I think it's pretty simple. Because in the end, it's like when you are asked by your bank to connect your other bank account, you need to have the reason. And very often, I have a feeling that it's like, please connect your account without giving the details why. But if I have the motivation, for instance, I can manage my finance altogether, I can access the lending easily, I can have a better overdraft, etc. It's a motivation for me. And this is, for me, it's simple. It's like all of us work like this. If I need to give something, you need to also give me something. Yes, I need to feel the benefit.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. Perfectly to time, actually. Perfectly to time. And what a good point to finish on, communication. Banks and SMEs. Thank you very much indeed, my panel, Katalin Kozli, Pavel Ramer, and Anna Kovalik. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.